Good evening, everyone. Welcome to CARE's fifth episode of our virtual caregiver support group. We are really excited about this one. Tonight we are hosting Dr. Shahla Alai, and this topic is about applied behavior analysis. And today with us we have Taylor McClanahan, who is our guest presenter, weekly presenter, and Taylor is a clinical master's in social work student at Marshall University. She's also a passionate autism parent and advocate, and as you know, at the end of each episode, Taylor really likes to take a moment to focus on caregiver self-care, and today she's going to talk about grounding techniques and what that is and how you can use that every day to make sure that you're doing your part to take care of you so that you can take care of your loved ones. We also have with us CARE's founder and Bright Futures CEO, Jill McLaury. Jill is here with us as an ABA provider here in our local area and a former student of Dr. Shahla. So I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Shahla introduce herself and tell us all about all the wonderful things she's done.
Oh, you're on mute, Shahla.
Sorry. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll start out and then introduce myself a little bit, okay?
Okay, you want to do that?
Yeah, my third slide. That's
okay.
what yeah, sorry.
All right.
I wasn't very clear about that. So let's go ahead and start, if it's okay. First of all, I want to say I'm very happy to be here today, and I appreciate Jill was a student at the University of North Texas, where I'm a professor many years ago, and is probably one of our alum that I'm most proud of the work that she's done. She has changed a lot of lives and done it in a really compassionate and skilled way. And so I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to help all of her people in any way I can. I also have family in Point Pleasant that have been there for generations. My Aunt Irma, great Aunt Irma, taught in a one-room schoolhouse in Point Pleasant many years ago. So I will go ahead and start, if that's okay.
Actually, yeah, give me just 1 second. I'm going to go over our disclosure policy for this presentation. Sure. So one of the things we like to make clear each week is that we are, by and large, providing you with information that we hope that you find useful, that you can take back to your team of providers and hopefully gain insights into your child's personal needs and your family's needs as a whole. We can't give you, we're not giving you professional medical advice based on your situation. We're just talking broadly about a subject so that you can, again, apply that back to your life. Taylor, you want to go over your little passion disclosure?
As Sarah mentioned, I'm currently a student for a clinical master's in social work, but first and foremost, I see myself as a parent and advocate for individuals having special needs, primarily because my son, Reese, has autism, and CARES has served us so well.
She makes an appearance every week.
I love her. I'm so sorry for getting distracted. I'm the worst about getting distracted. So the point in this class, what is wrong with me? I'm so sorry. The point of this group is for us to come together and give support to one another, because it can be very, very hard to be a parent or caregiver to someone who has special needs. So we're here to support. So with that, I'm asking everyone to please, if something pops up in the comments or something, let's all try to be kind to each other. Let's not focus on what divides us, but on what brings us together and our goal of bettering ourselves and our family. Another thing is, I understand that this is a public forum and everyone's, free to comment whatever they want, but let's try to maintain confidentiality. So, I wouldn't see Sarah in Kroger and point to my husband and say, hey, her kid only eats Oreo or something like that, so let's all be respectful of each other and really embrace the support that we can give to one another.
Fantastic. Thank you. A few CARES housekeeping issues before we let Dr. Shahla go ahead with her presentation. I'm sorry.
No, you're
Is,
good.
CARES has a caregiver survey that is open until March 26th. You can go on our Facebook page and see a direct link to it. But if you visit us at wvcaresforautism.org, it'll automatically pop up too. And this is really important because we are planning our 2021 and 2022 outreach opportunities and services. And in order to do that in a way that is meaningful to you, we need to know what it is that you need. What questions do you have? What supports do your families need? So just if you could hop on there, it's really easy. Let us know what it is, and we'll try our best to make it happen in the next 2 years. Another thing is we have our next in-person event, April 17th at Hurricane City Park. It is our Spectron and Family Fun Day. So I'm sure you've seen on Facebook that we've been talking about this. As a 501c3, we are funded by grants and largely by contributions from our community. So this is a great way for you to show up, get involved with what we do, have a good time with your kids in an outdoor space where it's safe, and get to know some other families here in the area that can support you as well. So with that being said, I'm going to do a giveaway today. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you were about to transition back to Dr. Alai. So I just wanted to personally thank Dr. Alai for being here. That folks have heard me say how much what folks know about Bright Futures is a direct correlation because of the training that I received at the University of North Texas, that you've heard me refer to that as the Harvard of ABA programs, and it absolutely was. And that was very much due to Dr. Shahla Alai, and her influence is just unparalleled. And so thank you, Shahla, for being with us.
Thank you.
One more thing, and then it's Shahla's turn. So,
I'm sorry, I thought you were going there and I jumped ahead. I was just worried.
Everyone's just so excited. Like I told Shahla before we started, like this is the one I've been the most excited about, that I feel nervous. Like so, but okay, we are gonna do a Spectron Family Pack giveaway. So I'm gonna give away 2 adults and 2 children for our Spectron entry, but you have to like or love this, you have to share it on your Facebook page, and you need to comment here and let me know that you did it before 9 o'clock. If you do those things, I'm going to get in touch with you and let you know if you're the winner. And the reason I really want you to share this is because with 1 in 54 being the autism prevalence, you know somebody who is questioning whether their child has autism or whether or not a program like what we're talking about is going to help them. And they are asking themselves maybe silently and not publicly yet. So if you share this, maybe we can reach them. Maybe we can help them start getting on the path that they need to support their kids. So like, love, share, and let me know that you did that. And I'll give you a 4-pack for our Spectron on April 17th at 9 o'clock. All right. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for.
Hi. I am, again, really happy to be here. And I do have to tell you, I had COVID, and my post-COVID state is a little bit slower than normal and not always as high energy, so I apologize. And it's a little bit later here in Texas. But mostly, I hope that I can share with you a little bit about what I've learned the past, actually 35 years in the field now. So what I'm going to do, if you could go to the next slide, please. Maybe. First, I want to tell you a little bit about, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who's helped me, a little bit about what I want to do today, and then I'll tell you a little bit about me. So first of all, I would like to thank all, I won't go into detail, but all the settings where I have trained. I started in the early 80s at the University of Kansas with the Early Childhood Autism Project, which was one of the first programs that was replicating some of the work from UCLA, where a lot of the groundbreaking work in this area had been done in behavior analysis. And then I've had several community settings that I work with and a lot of wonderful clinicians. And I have been an author on several articles in this area, trying to think about and find ways to do what we do better. But most of all for this talk, I want to thank my dear friend Peggy Hinkle-Wolf, who is the co-author of a book we have for families. And she is also my friend of 25 years. She's a journalist. And she's also the mother of Sam, a young man who has grown up with my kids over these past 25 years. Anyway, so a lot of what you're going to hear today is influenced and are things that I've also learned from Peggy. You can go to the next slide. So specifically what I'd like to do today is share some perspectives about applied behavior analysis, talk a little bit about what it is and a little bit about what it isn't. And I want to discuss what I think are 3 powers that are important for the autism journey. And you can go to the next slide. Okay. I see the formatting's changed a little bit, but that's okay. Anyway, so what I would like to do is I'm going to talk to you from the perspective of a grandparent. I am a grandparent, and I think Peggy and I are both in our 60s, and we have both been in the world of autism for quite a while, both as parents, now grandparents, and also we have both been involved with parent-to-parent groups and in professional organizations. So what I want to say, which sometimes, I think a lot of times when you're a parent, especially when you're very worried about your kids, and I've been very worried about my children, the thing that you want most immediately is you want that to stop, whatever is difficult for you. And I hope I help a little bit with that. I hope I answer some of your questions you're worried about. But the thing that I've learned as a grandparent is that it's not only stopping what you're worried about that's important, it's also making sure that you have a life journey that is full and happy. And that is a really hard thing, I think, when you're in the midst of trying to figure out everything you have to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that also. So I'm going to give you some specific here now stuff, and I'm going to give you some long haul things too, which is what grandmothers do, and sometimes people appreciate it and sometimes they don't. So okay, you can go to the next slide. So here's the first thing I want to tell you, is that behavior analysis is a science, and it's a science about learning. So before I tell you what applied behavior analysis is or isn't, I want to talk about a couple things about science. First of all sciences, no matter what kind they are trying to understand about order in the universe. They're trying to figure out how patterns happen. So getting a vaccine, that's because a bunch of people figured out the patterns of what happens with a virus. Turning on the lights, using these platforms, someone figured out the patterns about electricity and the transfer of electricity. So what we do as behavior analysts is that we're a particular type of science, and we look at patterns about how behavior changes. And the main way we do that is looking at patterns before the behavior, during the behavior, and after the behavior. It sounds really simple, but same way with photons and DNA. Once you understand it, it seems really simple. So everything that we do is centered around kind of the timing of all of that. And what we're trying to figure out when we're applied behavior analysts is how we can influence and produce valuable learning. And in our cases, I'm an applied behavior analyst who's worked with young children all my life. And I want valued learning that will help children have lives that are full of choices and love and happiness and opportunity. So a lot of what we do is the science of figuring that out. But here's the catch about science. As you probably all know from watching everything going on with this pandemic, is that science isn't black and white. Like, science progresses. Sometimes one thing's kind of true-ish, and then we find out something else, and something else is true-ish. So autism treatment and applied behavior analysis are like any other science. Sometimes it can look confusing, and part of my long-term advice will be about how to navigate that confusion. So we can go to the next slide. So, like all sciences, there's all these different branches of science. There's the conceptual guys, it's like theoretical physics. If you watch The Big Bang Theory, the people who like think about the theories, we have those too. I'm not one of those. Anyway, so we have conceptual analysis, which are people who think about kind of the words and way things are organized. And Jill studied at UNT, and at UNT we had some phenomenal theoretical people like Dr. Sigurd Glenn. Then there's also basic behavior analysts, and think the guys in the lab. So these men and women, what they do is a lot of times they look at models of the way they think things are, like, so how children develop self-injurious behavior. So they might actually look at it with rats, so they're not messing with real kids, to figure out what's happening with that timing of behavior, to see like what's going on and how can we help the next area, which is us, the applied behavior analysts. And we do science, but we do it in the field, and we do it about things that matter. So we still are trying to be systematic, and we're still trying to study things that will help other people, not just the people we're working with. And then there are practitioners, people who aren't necessarily doing research, but they're still applied behavior analysts. And what they're doing is their science is just about the little kiddo in front of them. So what they're trying to figure out is what is the best possible way to help this specific child, in our case with autism or learning disabilities or whatever it is. So when we look at applied behavior analysis, we're looking at overall, it means the focus is on things getting better, and there's learning that occurs. You can go to the next slide. You know what, I'm sorry, I think the conversion from my Mac to your PC threw off the PowerPoints because there's some information missing in odd ways and the fonts changed. But if everybody looks at the handout you got, if there are any details, they should be there properly. So what I gave all of this for you to take home too. And I also gave you a couple of packets for new parents and a handout about ABA that covers some of this information. So, okay, so let me go back to what applied behavior analysis is. One of the things that is important about applied behavior analysis is that what we do should actually be important to the people that we are working with. And in autism, that means the child. So what we do should be important to the child. They may not be in a position to completely evaluate it at first, but even one of our goals is that over time, they're in a position to say what they want, that they're in a position to say what they like and don't like. So that's important. And that child's family, what's important for the health of the family, the community, and society at large. It gets a little bit more complicated when you start thinking about society, because how society looks at disability, how society looks at people who label themselves as autistic, how society looks at a whole range of things is all very different. So part of what happens as you go along with as a parent of any child is you're bringing them up into the world, and you're working with your teams, and you're working with the child to figure out what's best for that particular child in their community. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So there are some characteristics of good ABA programs. And this is whether they are working with children with autism or whether they are early and intensive intervention programs. And I'm going to talk about those a little bit too. So first of all ABA programs should have clear goals and aims. And those goals and aims should be based a little bit on the scientifically reviewed research. So, for example, if you have cancer, you want your oncologist that's working with you to start and rely on treatments that have some scientific proven effects. And that is an important part of applied behavior analysis and when we're in practice. The other thing is that those research findings should be applied in a way that is valuable to the child and family. And that the behavior analyst should not only be thinking about right now, but they should also be thinking about what's going to happen to the child in the future. The other characteristic of ABA programs is that they use scientific method. So even if they're not researchers, they do things in a systematic way. And part of the reason for that is that what we learned is that if you're systematically monitoring a child's progress, when it starts to go off just a little bit, you can respond right away and change what you're doing. And if you find something that works, you can apply those same ways or clinical interventions to other things for that child. And the biggest thing is we are responsive to the child. If you see a program that is not, if they're just doing something at the child and it doesn't matter if the child's learning or not, it's probably not a very skilled ABA program. The other thing is if things don't work, a good behavior analyst and a good behavior analytic program is able to improvise. They're able to switch what they're doing and do it a different way. And finally, ABA programs that are strong and effective, the behavior analyst will have a lot of tools and strategies, many, many different ways of helping a child learn, and they will teach under more than one condition. Generalization is really important for almost all living beings. It's especially true for children with autism, which means that you can't only teach under one set of conditions. And again, the way they use those tools, they'll be very innovative and flexible, and they'll be able to move from one thing to another and respond rapidly to help a child learn faster. You can go to the next one. So I don't expect you to read that big long list, but you can Google them if you want to later. And actually the new parents packet I gave you has a really good website where you can actually go in and learn more about all this research. But the point I want to make here is there's over 50 years of data that in a cumulative way, and this is only some of the studies, but in a cumulative way, supports a particular type of intervention for very young children with autism. And we call that early and intensive behavior interventions. So what we have learned from all of that data is for very young children with autism, if you intervene early, if it's intensive, if it is responsive and progressive, meaning that it keeps changing based on the child, if the behavior analysts in the program are skilled at what they do, and if they're supervised by senior level people who have even more skills and experience, children will make incredible progress. However, what we also know from, I think, really sad research is that if children are in programs when people are unskilled, they don't know what they're doing, they don't know how to teach, they don't know how to change behavior, and they don't know how to do it in kind ways. Not only will the children not make progress, but sometimes they'll get worse, and they'll develop a lot of problem behavior. If programs are unsupervised, if there aren't layers of people with multiple and higher skills periodically looking at what's happening, children won't make progress, and they might get worse. And if people are unresponsive to children's progress, then they may not get worse, but they'll flatline. They won't get better. They won't learn skills that will have them have a life full of more opportunities. So there's quite a bit of research that's been done looking at all these dimensions, but that is one of the things that's clear is there's a difference in the quality of treatment and the intensity and the timing of it in terms of what kind of outcome children can make. We can go to the next slide. So that is a little bit, and we're going to return about ABA. That is a little bit about the dimensions of applied behavior analysis. And please feel free, as soon as I get through this next little section, we can ask questions and talk. Unless, I don't know, do you guys want to have questions in between, or should I just keep going?
It's whatever you would like. So far, I'm not sure that we've had any, but hey, if you all have questions about what you've heard so far, go ahead and put them in there. Okay, continue.
Okay, I do want to say it's really hard not looking at anybody when you're talking because I don't know, should I keep going fast or what should I do? So please forgive me if I'm not being responsive. I always kind of laugh because I give a lot of talks about being responsive. And since the pandemic hit, I'm doing this and it's sort of weird because there's no one in front of me anyway. So let me talk a little bit about what Peggy and I have been up to and some of my grandmother advice. So I don't know if any of you remember this, or it's still part of popular culture, but there was a book, The Wizard of Oz. And sort of the bottom line of the book was Dorothy and her friends got lost. And in the end of this whole adventure they had, they didn't give up. They kept going. And what they learned was they sort of had these powers always in even before they got lost that were going to help them from the beginning. And as Peggy and I were talking in our grandmother way, we started thinking, you know what, we think that there are probably 3 powers that each parent has within their capability that will help them along the way, especially when it gets hard. Because everything I just went over about ABA is awesome and wonderful, but the reality is it's a lot of work. It's a lot of emotional work. It's a lot of physical work, just finding the right providers, having day-to-day life, and knowing if you're making the right choices, if you're not making the right choices. There's a lot of, being a parent anyway is hard. It's the most incredible thing, but it's hard. And when you have a child who's a little bit different from everybody else, those choices become more involved also. So we started thinking about what are the superpowers? And so I'm going to talk about 3 superpowers right now. So you can go to the next slide. So the first one is the power of learning. And the first point I want to make about the power of learning, and you can go to the next slide, is that, got cut off a little bit, but the power of learning is for all of us. And I think when you are setting out on this journey, it's probably important to know that your child is going to learn. I'm pretty sure you all make sure of that, and your wonderful teams will help you with that. You're going to learn along the way, and your providers are going to learn along the way. If you are in a situation where you're not all learning, something needs to change. And I'll talk about in the next 2 powers about how to make those changes. But let me talk about your child, you, and your providers. So we can go to the next slide. So here's the first thing. Your child's not going to be happy all the time. That's not how it works. However, your child should be happy most of the time. And if you are in a treatment situation where your child is very, very distressed and frustrated all the time, something is wrong. Skilled practitioners do not frustrate your child all the time. They start to learn how to dance with your child. They start to learn how to have a relationship with your child. And also your child makes progress. So they do both things. They generally are able to have happy children that they care for and that they're teaching, that they're conducting interventions with, and those children make progress. So as you're going along, what you want to learn as a parent is how to watch your child be in situations where they are both learning and generally happy. And that is part of what will happen for your child as you're going along. So learning is a superpower for your child, and you learning how to get them in a situation where that can happen is also a superpower. So let's go to the next one. This is more about parents. I'm gonna tell you 3 quick stories, and I hope I'm okay with time. I'm going to tell you 3 quick stories that actually helped me a lot. I like to look at things that are happening in life as I'm going through and think about, well, how does that apply to my own children and what I'm learning about them, and how does it apply to the children that I'm working with? So the first one is about clothes dryers, which I don't know if you all know, but it's a really big cause of fires in homes. So I had a clothes dryer and it wasn't working. I had to dry things like 5 times, which is really expensive. And my aunt came and she said, "Oh, that's an old clothes dryer. I'm going to get you a new one," because it was during a time where I didn't have very much money. So she got me a new clothes dryer. And then after about like a year and a half, I started having to do the same thing. And then I thought, well, this wasn't a very good clothes dryer because I didn't have very much money and I didn't want to burden my aunt. So I picked the cheapest one. So I went to Lowe's and there was another one on sale that was a good one. So I got that one. And like 6 months later, it breaks. So I get on Consumer Reports and it said, "Oh, this is a bad clothes dryer." Which is probably why it was on sale. So by then I'm getting really upset because clothes dryers are expensive. And I call a guy in and he says, "The problem's not your clothes dryer." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, the way your house was built, the vent is up on the roof and your clothes dryer is down here. And you have a lot of stuff in there and you're lucky your house didn't burn down." He was a really good guy. And he told me, this firefighter who cleans out hair or clothes dryer vents and all of that. The reason I'm telling you this story, a good behavior analyst, and I should have called someone in right away instead of going through all of that, but the reason I didn't is I had one kid who was super high need. I had another kid who was a baby. I had 2 parents who were sick, and one of them was dying. And I was working full time, probably the life most of you had. So I just did whatever I could at the moment. But what I learned from that is sometimes, especially if you see a problem keep happening, you should call in people who will look at the whole system and help you figure out the bigger picture. That was what I learned from the clothes dryers. Let me go to 4-H. Have you guys been in 4-H? I can't see you to say it, but I was in 4-H. You wouldn't know it from my name, but I had this really Midwestern upbringing. So I was in 4-H, really good at baking. I won ribbons and all that. Here's the thing about baking, and I learned this from my friend Peg, who's an exquisite chef. So you can give, and they do this in 4-H, the same recipe for pound cake to everybody. So say you give it to 20 different people, they will come in with 20 different versions of pound cake. Many of them will be good and edible, some will be really horrible, and some will be exquisite. Here's the lesson about that. Behavior analysis is like that with a kid. It makes a difference how much someone knows about all those ingredients and how to put them together to turn out a great pound cake. It's the same way with the treatment program. You will have people who have learned a lot about the ingredients and have a lot of people helping them and will know just how to do things in a certain way that is magic for your baby. You want to look for those people. Here's the last story. This is about pilots. So pilots, high stakes, right? You do it wrong, boom, everybody's dead. Here's the thing about pilots is they actually go through training in something called hazardous attitudes. And what they learn is they learn attitudes that get them into trouble and are more likely to make them crash and kill people. And while what behavior analysts do isn't killing people or having them survive. What happens in a treatment program can affect the course of a child's life. And it's a big deal what happens when they're young, because the magnitude, how much you can change, will affect the child. So some of the hazardous attitudes, and I won't go into all of them, but I think I'll just tell you a couple and you'll get the idea. If you're macho and think you know everything and don't listen to people around you, it's going to be a problem. If you're fatalistic and say, you know what, it's going to happen anyway, it's going to be a problem. So think about all those attitudes that can get you into trouble, and try not to have them with your babies because it will hurt them. Okay, let me go to the next slide. So professionals have a whole way of working with all those things about our own learning. It's called evidence-based practice, and hopefully your physicians, your oncologists, all the people in your life, your gynecologists, your obstetricians, everybody who is in science and practice will do some version of this. First of all, we've learned how to clinically assess things to know what we need to do and under what conditions. We understand the science behind what we're doing, the concepts, so that we can troubleshoot. We also know the research that's out there. And in our learning, we develop wisdom and we get wise people around us, which leads to my next point. And I'm going to try to get there fast because I think I'm a little behind. The power of connecting. And what I want to say here is, this is true for all of us. So the way to have better pound cakes, the way to not have hazardous attitudes, the way to engage in better evidence-based practice is to have a community. So I'm going to talk about that really quick. You can go to the next slide, sorry. So the first thing to know is no parent raises a child alone. We really don't. And the more we can expand our community to help with that, the better off our children will be in so many different ways. You can go to the next one. I'm going to try to clip through, Sarah. So here's one of the ideas I think that is a superpower about connecting, is having a community of practice. And in anthropology and social work, a community of practice is a group of people who share a common interest, like everybody here. You want to support each other and you want to do what you're doing better as a parent in a healthier way. So you get together regularly and you learn how to do what you're doing better. So parents, professionals, and actually kids all need communities of practice. Okay, so you can go to the next one. Part of the reason that a community of practice is important is that you can help each other. You can share wisdom. There are things that my friend Peggy knows about parenting, because she actually, her kids are slightly older than mine. So even like how to nurse your babies, I had to ask her, you know, so like all of those kinds of things you can learn. Same thing about learning about ABA. When you have a community, talk to other parents, talk to other professionals, get more input and share your wisdom. And it's also nice to have someone to share the burden with, because some of what happens as a parent, whether you have a child with autism or a child with a generalized anxiety disorder or a child with dyslexia, there will be sadness. And sometimes it helps to have someone to share the sadness with. Okay, next slide. So this is another little story. I'm going to make it fast too. How am I on time?
You're fine. You're fine. This is so
okay
and important. Please take the time you need and go over what
okay.
you want.
Okay, and you guys can look over the materials, and as soon as we're done with the book, we're making it really cheap. I'll send Jill 1 billion copies or something. Anyway, this is another story that we talk about. The Halcyon was this bird in Greek mythology. And what the Halcyon did is pretty much still the seas so she could lay her nest and the babies could be born, basically. So this is like an incredible mother that she calmed the seas in the middle of winter. And I think one of the things that Peggy and I have seen over our years working with families is parents of kids with autism are like this. And when they're not, other parents can come in and help. And this is why the connecting is so important, is because sometimes you were going to have to do something that is monumental as calming the seas. And to do that, it's easier to do if you have a community that helps you. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So the last thing I'm going to talk about really fast is the power of loving. This is a hard one because I think we think of loving as something that just happens. And loving, first of all, is a noun and a verb, and it is a skill to develop. And you know you love your child, but believe me, when your child is throwing stuff across the room, I had a child who did that once, many times, or doing all those things, you are tested in your love. And when someone is hurting your child, it's really hard to look at that other person and feel anything close to love for that person who's hurting your child. So loving, just in terms of the parenting process, is a process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that, from the grandmother point of view, seem important. You can go to the next slide. First of all, I think it feels easy when your child has special needs or is different or is suffering in some way, like if your child gets cancer or your child has autism or your child has been molested, all that whole range of things that is so hard and all kinds of different. Or even as a parent, if your child is bullied or excluded from being around other kids, there's a whole range of things that hurt our hearts. The important thing, I think, in this whole process is you have to keep looking for ways to find joy and meaning in whatever it is that's happening within your family. And it will not always be easy, but returning to that and having your community help you figure that out will be an important part of living a full life. It is not an easy thing. And it actually doesn't matter what kind of parent you are. This is true across the board. Actually, it's probably true just being a human being. But I think sometimes when you're so invested in figuring out all the details of life, like how to get the food on the table, how to fix your dryer, how to make sure the kids are dressed when they walk out the door, make sure you remember the treatment book, make sure you do X, Y, Z. It's hard to sit back and reflect on what's happening and enjoy it, no matter what it is. Because when you look back in life, when you're 60 years old, you think, oh, you know, that was so hard. Like I remember my mom was mentally ill and had dementia, and I never thought in the midst of it that any of it was joyful. It was really, really hard. And I look back now and I think, you know what, even sitting in the lobby of the facility where I was holding her hand and we were talking, that was a joyful moment. Does that make sense? So with your connections, with your community, someone can do what I just did and tell you this moment, you're going to look back and you're going to think it's a good one, even though it doesn't feel like it. But me telling you that will help you, which is why a community helps in that way. Okay, next slide. So that should say emotions as goals and guides. Here's the thing. So I'm a little teary-eyed telling you that about my mom, partly because she's passed away and I miss her, but partly because I look at your faces when I start saying that and I register, because I see a couple of you, that you know what I'm talking about. How something can be so painfully difficult, but it can also be a really important connection with someone you love. So the thing to do is watch your own emotions and use those as goals and guides for understanding the importance of something and finding a place of love. Okay, next slide. And also be nice to yourself. Know when you're making progress, which is really hard, especially I think, I don't mean to diminish fathers in any way, but I think mothers there's a really big expectation that we do everything and we do everything well, and everything that happens with our children is our fault. And so I think that we don't always give ourselves a break in terms of when we're learning something or when we are making progress. And I think that that's something that we should try to do ourselves, and we should also try to help our community do. Okay, next thing. So this is almost the last thing. So I think one of the things that's happened with the pandemic is I think the whole world has learned what it's like to love in a time of uncertainty. The whole world is learning when everything is shifting all around you, what do you do? How do you become resilient? Everybody's talking about resilience. How do you figure out how to make things work? How do you move forward? Well, I think for a lot of parents of children with autism, when you get that diagnosis, when you start feeling that something's wrong, everything got uncertain right away. And that ability to move forward and figure out what to do that the whole world's learning right now, I have watched parents do in the last 30 years. You will do it and you will figure it out. And especially if you find your superpowers, it'll be a good journey. And I think, especially if the professional community joins you in developing those powers as well, and in developing more possibilities for services, more and more children and families will have those experiences. So the last thing I want to leave you with is the next slide. And actually, I gave you the article that this is from, which I think is a really helpful one. The last author on this, I don't know if these were her students that wrote it, but the last author was the person who did one of the first putting all the research together and figuring out what exactly we know. She did the first standards project looking at research. So I think she had a really good handle on what to include in the list about when you're looking for a provider, what kinds of things. And I would actually just take the list. And I would say, you know what, I heard this is what I should ask you about, and then just go through it with them. Anyway, I know I talked really fast and I'm so sorry, but I hope that helped a little bit. And I'm around to ask questions if you want to talk about anything.
So some of the feedback you're getting, Dr. Shahla, Emily says, I love this presentation. Thank you for sharing, Shahla. And Brittany says, yes, thank you. And she has little heart emojis. Because I am glad that I clicked on this live, just what my mommy heart needed this evening. And I have to agree, I did not expect to be so emotionally touched during a discussion on ABA, but I'm so thank you. We got another thank you from Tony. You're really reaching everyone, and we appreciate you.
Well, thank you. You know, I really think all of us have so much concern for our kids in all different ways. And I think that what's happened with the pandemic is any of the frailties, and Jill knows, my family has a whole lot of stuff. And actually, even autism, I have a cousin with autism, but there are some other things with mental health and which is different. But I get what it is to parent in that way. And because of all the families I've worked with, I do think the heart part of it is really important in ABA. I think, unfortunately, some of my colleagues may have strayed away from that a little bit, or not understood how deeply important it is to understand you're part of a person's life. But we are. Any questions? Or and also I probably just dumped a lot.
No, you're doing great. I'm on.
Oh, we lost Sarah.
We got another comment that said that was amazing. Thank you. sometimes we have questions, and I really have to say from the bottom of my heart, I think you just explained everything so clearly and eloquently and beautiful, that everyone's leaving here with a lot of information. And I personally am so thankful for all the information you gave. I know that ABA too. So something personal of mine, back when my son, he's 10 now, when he was 2, we looked into ABA, and the information I had at that time as a teen mother, as someone who was really, Google was my research at that point, it was all negative things, you know? And so I'm always so thankful for the opportunity so that parents can have better informed decisions on what avenues to take for their children. And so I'm so glad that you listed, you really put it in a way that shows that all those negative reports are coming from ABA that aren't doing their job right. And if ABA is conducted in the right way, wonderful results will come. And I think a lot of parents at Bright Futures have seen that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, because this is a really hard thing for me to say, but there's a lot of really bad programs. And it hurts my heart because I love ABA. I mean, I literally love it because I think it can be so good and so powerful. But I have also seen, and I don't know all the reasons why, but there are a lot of very low quality programs that I think maybe in the long run hurt kids. And that, so when people are on the internet saying the programs are bad, I actually believe them. I think there are a lot of bad programs, you know, but I think there are also a lot of good programs. So it's like, what do they say? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah.
Well, thank you for empowering us tonight to make that decision, you know, and find a resource for ABA that'll be good. I really appreciate that. Brittany says, we were so skeptical of ABA and decided to give it a chance 1.5 years ago. Our little girl has made so much progress. It's incredible. That's
really good.
I'm so happy for you, Brittany.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you guys wanted to say before I go into grounding real quick?
I'll just say quickly to thank you, Shahla, and for pinpointing so well to why we created CARES. That it is exactly you pointing out of how important it is to have a community, specifically of parents, working together and sharing information, but also in partnership with professionals. So thank you for highlighting that so well. Is my other quick, I'm here to be your cheerleader, basically, like always.
Well, you know what? I honestly, maybe Sarah and I will talk and see if someday I can come back, because I'm really still not feeling very well. So I feel I'm probably more emotional than normally, but I don't feel like I'm as explaining things as well. So maybe another time I'll be able to come back and be a little bit more perky. Anyway.
You were great. I was trying to say this earlier, but we are having a tough night here, so I've been on mute a lot more.
Don't worry.
Your chapter about loving is right on tonight.
And actually, Sarah, my neighbor, right before this happened, an ambulance came from my neighbor's mom, and she's panicking, so they're texting me. It's like, you know what? This is our life right now. All of us. There's everything. So we just need to love each other and keep learning and keep staying together as a community. So.
Absolutely. Well, we would have you back anytime that you would grace us with your presence. I think there's so much to this topic and so much to talk about as well. Yeah. So I appreciate you giving our families an overview of those important foundational questions, what it is, how to find, disseminate between providers, and how to just enter this with an open heart and resilience and grace, because those are certainly needed when you're addressing behaviors. We didn't start ABA with my son until he was 8. So we had a lot of extinguishing behaviors that were very explosive. And sometimes it's really, really hard. You know, but he's in a better position now because he had good therapists, because he was able to push through and learn and adapt. And so it's not always perfect, but it's a path.
And I think that's so important. You know, I think we have this idea, all of us, that things should be a certain way. That was really hard for me, especially with one of my kids, when it was not at all that way. and to figure out, okay, but this is where we are now. And how do we move forward and also find comfort and happiness for all of us, whatever the situation is. I think we're developing really good skills that the rest of the world is needing right now too. Like you see everybody else freaking out, and I think that's not as difficult as the other things that we've been doing. So anyway, well, I do think I might go help my neighbor. So I'm gonna let you guys go. And then we'll be in touch. And thank you so much. And I wish that I could see all your lovely families. You know, maybe in the future I'll be in West Virginia if this all stops.
It's going to happen.
That would be fantastic. Well, thank you, Shahla.
Anyway, thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was fantastic.
It was. She was incredible.
My favorite people on earth.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions that they would still like to ask, we can certainly pop them in there. She's been very helpful. Jill can help address them too if they're about ABA. But we're going to go ahead and move into Taylor's discussion about grounding. And go ahead.
First, I just to kind of piggyback off of Dr. Shahla, I want you guys to know that you are showing your superpowers, even though you don't realize, maybe you don't realize you have them, maybe you do. And that's in congratulations too. But we all know that you love your children very, very much, even though love can be work sometimes. You love them very much. We know that you're connecting because you're in this support group right now. I know I feel better. This is awful to say, Sarah, I feel better that you're having a bad day, because I have so many bad days that it's nice to see that I'm not the only one going through it. So as much as I hate that you're going through it right now, I am very glad to be reminded that I'm not the only crazy house in the world.
Oh, and you are definitely not, sweetheart. So I understand. Glad I could make you feel better.
And thank you. And then learning, you're on here, you're seeking out information, whether you've marked this event on your calendar or whether you said, what's this about, and clicked on it. You're actively learning, which is a great service you're doing for yourself. So I've spent the last few weeks talking about the importance of self-care and self-love. And so I want to bring it back and talk about grounding. And what grounding is physically reminding yourself that everything's going to be okay. The part of your brain, the amygdala, which is the fight, flight, or fear, it's the alarm system in your brain. So it's the stress signal. You get stressed out. You do bodily things. Your muscles tense up. My very worst one is I grit my teeth sometimes and I don't realize it till I have a jaw ache. So we have all these different physical body responses to feeling stressed. And then what does our brain do when it feels our body tense up? It continues the cycle of, hey, something's wrong. So how grounding can help in this is relaxing your body to help relax your brain. And there are a lot of different things you can do for this. An important thing to me is that you try to learn what sensory experiences you like. So an example of this is it drives me crazy, but it calms my husband down when he's stressed to pick up whatever is beside him and fiddle with it, to feel it, to just touch, have this experience, like this water bottle. My husband was stressed. He'd be doing this right now, just to focus on the sensation of his fingers on that bottle ridge. I have very bad driving anxiety. I realized that my cat, who I pet a lot, helps me calm down. I got a fuzzy steering wheel. I kid you not. Sometimes I will pet that steering wheel when there's two semis on each side of me and I'm just so nervous. And it helps. So sensory experiences are really important and a part of grounding. So try to seek out, does picking up a candle and sniffing it help you feel better? Does a physical act like putting your hands under the sink just to feel that water flow off of them, is that something that can help you calm down and be in the moment? Another thing you can do is purposefully tense yourself up like this, hold it tight, maybe count to 5, and then relax absolutely everything. And you will feel so much better afterwards. So tonight's homework and challenge is to try to find a sensory experience that can help you ground yourself and be in the moment when you're very, very stressed out. And the more you practice grounding, the more you'll notice when you are stressed and can help calm yourself down. Just as I've been saying throughout the weeks, and what Sarah's been saying and Dr. Shahla told us, remember to give yourself a break and love yourself, because you're doing incredible. And probably the only person who talks about as bad about you as you feel is yourself. So really practice self-compassion, self-love, and give yourself credit for everything you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, that was great. Jill, do you have anything to add to tonight's conversation?
I'll just share a little bit about grounding and then come back quickly to just ABA and I think some of the best advice I can give to parents. For grounding, some that I found helpful is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5 things that you see, 4 things that you hear, 3 things that you smell, or that you go through your 5 senses. That one's been really helpful. So that's one of my favorite ones.
We do that one with Jet. That was like the mindfulness, when you're way overloaded.
Yeah, it's just a nice way to redirect if you're getting really, really anxious. I know one of a person I care about a lot that she uses that she will track all the states or spell things or something like that too. It's just a way to get you kind of redirected too. So anyway, there's a couple of tips. If the other things didn't strike a chord, maybe try those. But I think in lines with what Shahla was saying too, for parents when trying to figure out, find the right provider, is it the right fit? Bottom line is moms, trust your gut, trust your instincts. That is the bottom line. That if something is telling you like, something's not feeling right, I'm not sure about it, you're right. And that you should check it out. And so I think that is, above and beyond the best advice is, if trust yourself and trust your instincts. So, and ask a lot of questions and hold your providers accountable, all of them. Like you're not just behavior analysts right now. The obvious talk is about behavior analysis, but with everybody that's in your life that is there to serve your child, that the reality is you and your child are in a vulnerable situation where you need lots of help, and you've got to rely on people to help you. And so it's easy to be taken advantage of when you're not very well-educated consumers, when you just hear like, hey, your kid needs this service, go find it. And there are very few options. That again, trust your gut and ask questions. So that's the best advice I can give you. So just that.
It's solid. It's solid. I've not followed my mom gut before.
I've never seen a functioning mom. Certainly there's some folks that, maybe not, but 99.9% that I've never seen a mother's instinct be wrong. So trust it. So anyway.
Okay. So it is 9:08. I'm going to do one more last call for our giveaway people. Okay, so if you weren't here earlier, I'm going to put this back on the screen. This is your last chance. So I'm going to give away a Spectrum Family 4-pack after this presentation. You need to like, love, and share this, and then let me know in the comments that you did. I'm going to pull from the comments a random, I'm going to count how many there were. I'm going to put it in a random number thing. And if you've done the like, love, share, I will contact you and give you a free family 4-pack. And the reason I want you to like, love, share is, yes, I want more people to see this video. But the reason I want more people to see this video is because with 1 in 54 children diagnosed with autism, the chances that people in your Facebook, in your world, and on your Facebook who have questions that maybe haven't really started asking, but they're thinking it, this could be very beneficial to them. I was once that mom, had questions, wasn't sure. I have friends now who will tell me, I stalk your page just to see what you're saying because I'm not sure, but I need to, I want the information. There are people on your pages that do that too. So share with them so that hopefully we can get them and their family on the path that they need to be. So with that, I'm going to lead us out here with our Spectrum video, and then I'm going to come back and pull a winner. So thank you everybody for coming on here tonight. And thank you, Jill, for hopping on last minute. I know.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was happy
Kind of
to.
caught you off guard, but I'm glad you could join us.
Happy to be here.
All right. Bye, everybody.